Welcome back everyone to the next installment of Corpse Party Blood Drive. We've completed EX chapters 1 through 3. We have up through 7, and then there's the mysterious number 8. We're gonna go in order. 3 was freaking incredible. Let's see what happens in 4. Memories, like beautiful dreams. This might be unpleasant. Oh, we hadn't seen much of you. I was wondering about this, because she ran away from him, and then we just kind of pieced out and didn't get anything until the end of the game. I guess if we'd taken a look at this chapter in the meantime, things would have made a little more sense. Through my hazy vision, all I could see was a red pair of eyes cutting through the darkness like flames. I could barely breathe, and I kept drifting in and out of consciousness. I wonder why. Why at a time like this would that sticker photo I kept on my desk be the first thing to pop into my mind? I know they say your life flashes before your eyes before you die, but this was only a single page from my past, albeit a very dear one. I could hear their laughter in the back of my head. The sky was a beautiful crimson-purple fusion, and the sweetness of that cake from the cafe was still on my tongue as we entered the photo booth. Somehow, the answers to these questions seemed less interesting to me by the moment, as events from my past replayed themselves within me. It was like I'd gone back in time. And then, all of a sudden, the sound of a door being thrown open brought me back to my senses.
Sayaka! 買ってきたよ、Sayaka! お待たせ、Sayaka! 寂しくはなかったかな？待ちくたびれて泣いてたんじゃないのかな？
This guy.
うるさいわね、犬丸。ナホタンが寝てるんだから。静かにしなさいよ。
Jesus. I'd heard every word and raised my head to survey the situation. Though I first regained my focus by staring at the clock above the blackboard, which slowly registered in my newly awakened mind as indicating it was now 4 o'clock. I must have been exhausted from working on that draft late into the night, but with the deadline fast approaching, I had little other choice. I also must have been out for a really long time, as I had absolutely no memories of anything from 6th period. I looked around me, but the only other people in the room were Sayaka and Inumaro. Sayaka seemed to have noticed I'd woken up and was running over to check on me, but I just shook my head, first to indicate no, then much harder to shake off the drowsiness.
大丈夫。それよりさやか、私が起きるのを待っていたの？待たせちゃってごめんね。なんでナホタンが謝るの？もう、私とナホタンの中でそんな遠慮はなしだよ。
Sayaka flashed me an overzealous, forced smile, which I returned, though mine was quite natural. Hers probably was too, actually, though I couldn't say for sure. Either way, it was super cute.
ところで犬丸、頼んだものはどこ？
The tone in her voice changed completely, and her smile disappeared too, now that she was addressing Inumaro instead of me.
Sayaka がその細くて可憐な手を差し伸べてくれたなら、俺はどんな質問にも心を込めて答えさせてもらうよ。
This guy.
そう、例えば俺がSayakaをどれだけ愛しているかについてとかね。
そういうのほんといいから。頼んだものはどこなのって聞いてるの。
いつもの恥ずかしがりがまた出たね。まったく、いつになったらSayakaは素直になってくれるのかな。
This guy's gotta relax. Haruki Inumaro was our mutual classmate and a childhood friend of Sayaka's. Everything he did for Sayaka. His whole world seemed to revolve around her, and sometimes she'd play along, making his day, but that hadn't happened for a while now. He had the blood of an Izumo priest running through his veins, which gave him a considerable amount of spiritual ability, though he never seemed to like having that brought up.
さやか、何か犬丸くんに頼んでたの？うん、おやつ。ナホタンも一緒に食べよう。 いいけど、ここで?
If you're hungry, you should just eat on the way home. That's what I'd always been taught. Though, actually, we did eat on the way home all the time, so I guess this particular hunger somehow ran deeper.
どうしてもね、お腹が空いちゃって。我慢できないから、ここで食べたいなって。
さやか、持ってきたよ。
Inumaro, who had left the room without our knowledge a few seconds earlier, suddenly burst back in, with a flatbed cart in tow, squeaking away. And I could hardly believe what was on it.
じゃっじゃーん、どうだいさやか、すごい量だろ。
Jeez. Boxes and boxes of fatty, sugary, prepackaged foods lined every square inch of the transport.
ケーキにワッフル、ドーナツ。あ、最近できたばかりのプレッツェル屋さんの箱も。
Add to that cookies, pies, macaroons, even ice cream. He had all the bases covered for sure.
やったーおいしそういただきます
To my surprise, Sayaka beelined for one of the boxes, setting in motion what may have been the biggest binge I'd ever seen. Box after box fell before her, many before she even sat down. 'Sayaka was ingesting these fatty, sugary, processed foods at an alarming rate. I'd never seen one person eat so much food she shouldn't in such a short period of time.
さやか、どうしたの？あ、もちろんナホタンも食べてね。どれも美味しいよ。そんなにお腹が空いていたの？そうなの。甘いものがとにかく食べたくってね。カロリーが心配だけど、でも食べたいんだから仕方ないよね。
Yeah, I think you're gonna die, like, just for that.
まさかこれ全部食べるつもり？
I was legitimately scared by the sheer quantity of sweets still stacked on the cart. I mean, I love candy as much as the next person, but I was practically getting heartburn just looking at this massive haul.
ちゃんと全部食べるよ。ちょっとさやか、本気なの？
いい食べっぷりだな。足りなくなったら言ってね、さやか。すぐに追加を買ってくるから。
何を言ってるの、犬丸くん。こんなに食べさせたらさやかが太ってしまうじゃない。
心配ご無用だよ、さえのきさん。さやかならどれだけふくよかになっても可愛いに決まってるからね。ああ、でも抱きしめた時に両腕が届くくらいまでにしてもらえると俺としては嬉しいんだけど。
I suppose.
バカみたいなこと言ってないで、そっちの箱取って、犬丸。
はい、喜んで。あ、なんならあんしてあげるよ。ほら、マカロンを食べさせてあげよう。
それ犬丸の手垢がついたからいらない。あんた食べてね。
やったー、さやかが俺におやつをくれた。
ほんとかわいそうな人。
Inumaro was now holding the macaroon close to his heart with a joyous expression on his face. I couldn't bear to look at him anymore, so I turned my attention back to Sayaka. I studied her as she continued to engorge herself, trying to determine how someone so typically mild-mannered had wound up in such a state. This was decidedly not normal behavior for her in any way. Something was definitely off.
それにしても何か違和感があるのだけれど。
Yeah, I wonder if this has to do with the interaction with Sachiko on the radio station. Everyone was affected who's gotten in contact with her in some way, so maybe this is it? The longer I stared at her, the more I was able to make out a faint shadow wavering just behind her. And by the way, if you don't know what I mean about the radio station, this was an aside in Book of Shadows.
Ray?
It It was a low-level spirit, one that could easily slip by unnoticed if a highly trained observer weren't looking very, very closely. Specifically, it was the spirit of a little girl, as attachment to Sayaka was quite weak. It wouldn't take a lot of effort to exercise. I was now fully convinced that Sayaka's superhuman appetite originated from that little girl.
Sayaka,
I produced a talisman from my bag and was just about to throw it down, but Sayaka quite aggressively shook her head at the notion.
Naho-chan, dame! Warui rei janai kara!
That could be a problem. The girl behind Sayaka did seem genuinely pleased every time Sayaka popped something in her mouth. And there wasn't the slightest hint of malevolence from her. If anything, she projected a certain innocence that genuinely made even me kind of sympathize with her. One of my secret joys was admiring Sayaka's magazine spreads. She always wore the most beautiful clothes, exhibiting a true sense of style and a true understanding of fashion in every photograph. Though I could hardly say it out loud, it was much too embarrassing.
Sayaka, どんな例にせよ、取り憑かれた状態はあまり良くないわ。やっぱり払った方がいいと思う。悪いことはできそうにない子だから平気だよ。
If a person who's been possessed is covering for the spirit, that makes exorcism much more difficult, even potentially impossible, low level or no. My hands were more or less tied.
犬丸くん、さやかを説得したいのだけれど、手伝ってくれる？
説得？どうして？
さやかに霊がついたままなんて、あなただって嫌でしょ？
そうだね。あまりいい気分はしないけど、でも霊に同情するさやかの心優しさに俺は感動してしまったんだ。
まさかあなたまで霊を払わなくていいと思っているの？
だってあの子は悪霊じゃないからね。
さやかがカロリー過多でモデルを辞めることになってしまっても、あなたは構わないの？
もちろん問題ないよ。さやかがそれでいいって言うなら俺もそれでいいんだ。俺とさやかの心は二人で一つだからね。
あなたに相談した私がバカだったみたい。
My head began to hurt, and every second I watched Sayaka continue to devour her snacks, I became more and more inclined to stop her.
ここはもう強行策に出るしかない。
Sayaka might hate me for this, I thought, but that was a risk I was willing to take. My course of action decided upon, I took my stance and prepared to send that girl along to the ever after, but before I could even begin the chant, an unexpected visitor arrived. Yeah, I did forget. Aiko's kind of flashing back before she dies. The classroom door was wide open, and there she stood, the infamous Aiko Niwa, wearing a unique combination of kimono and school uniform. She was a self-proclaimed intelligence agent from Class 3-5, and she had a lot of tendencies that I found distasteful. Specifically, she seemed to live for collecting spirit items, and just in general came across as a bit shady and manipulative. Or at least that's how I'd always seen her. Mouthful of donuts, Sayaka nonetheless did her best to acknowledge the presence of this new arrival. She wasn't particularly fond of Aiko, however, as the two of them had butt heads previously. But Sayaka had a general love of beautiful girls, and Aiko ranked fairly high in her beauty scale, so she always seemed a little conflicted about that.
Aiko, 何しに来たの？
あら、そう冷たい声を出さないで、ナホちゃん。私はただ帰ろうと思って階段を降りていたら甘い香りが漂ってきたから気になっただけよ。そうしたらナホちゃんたちに出くわしたの。これって運命かしら。
アイコさん、ナホちゃんに色目使わないでください。
まあ、そんなことしてないわ。言いがかりはよしてね、さやかちゃん。
アイコ、さやかを煽らないで。
そんなつもりはないのだけど。
あのね、今はあなたの相手をしている暇はないの。
そうなの？
She tilted her head and examined the cart full of sweets, then compared its size to Sayaka's tiny frame.
あらあら、さやかちゃんは女力士役のオファーでも来たのかしら。
さやかが女力士。
Sayaka seemed confused, and Inamaru seemed disturbingly intrigued. I just ignored them both and let out a huge sigh.
アイコ、よく見て。さやかの後ろに霊がいるでしょ。
うん？あら、そう言われてみれば。まあ、随分と影の薄い霊だこと。
その子がさやかに取り付いて、これだけのスイーツを食べさせているのよ。払いたいのに、さやかが協力的じゃなくて困っていたところなの。
そういうことだったの。なら、ちょっと見せてもらえるかしら。
Aiko cautiously approached Sayaka and observed the spirit's behavior for a moment. Aiko's passion was the collection of spirit items infused with deep hatred or malice. So if this little girl wound up being a little darker than she seemed, Aiko would undoubtedly snatch her away on the spot.
スイーツに執着心があるのね。そう。それで、自己死についてはどう思っているのかしら。さぞ無念だったのでしょう。相手を殺してやりたいとか呪ってやるとか考えているのではなくて。
Reminds me of, Grim Fandango. You ever done any killing? No. Even a teensy bit of killing? Nope.
そう？じゃあ誰かで構わず同じ目に遭えばいいなんて風には思わない？あら、そうなの。
Aiko broke off the conversation shortly after this exchange and walked back toward me with slumped shoulders.
ダメね。全然なってないわ。せっかく霊になったというのに、美味しいスイーツが味わえれば満足なのですって。
That's great.
信じられる？ナホちゃん。彼女、何も恨んでないっていうのよ。ありえないでしょ。そんな霊に存在価値はないわ。
Aiko had completely lost interest, and she didn't seem to care the little girl had heard every word she'd said. The spirit was on the verge of tears, shrinking back behind Sayaka to distance herself as much as possible from this hostile new presence.
そこまでアイコが言うってことは、本当に悪意は皆無なんでしょうね。だからね、ほんとかわいそうな子なんだよ。分かってあげて、ナホタ。
Sayaka spoke with a bit of staccato, her lips sticky with apple pie residue.
でもさやか、そのまま食べ続けてたら大変でしょ。そうかな。
さやかちゃんはその霊がかわいそうだから除霊はしなくていいと考えているのね。
はい。
そうなの。ナホちゃんがこんなに心を痛めているのに、あなたはその霊に味方をするというわけなのね。
Oof.
ねえ、
Low
ナホちゃん
blow, Aiko.
さやかちゃんたらひどいわね。
Aiko smiled and sidled up next to me. She was clearly plotting something. She took my hand in hers and wrapped her fingers around it delicately.
あなたの気持ちを無下にする子なんて放っておいて、私とデートしましょう、ナホちゃん。
Sayaka immediately shot to her feet, knocking over her chair in the process. And just like that, she no longer had the slightest interest in any part of the mountain of candy that lay sprawled out before her. This sudden shift separated the spirit from Sayaka as if the cord had been cut on a kite.
ナホタン、デートするなら私としよう。今日は放課後オフだから。ね、ね。構わないけど。やったー！ナホタンとデート！
Sayaka hugged me excitedly, and I was overjoyed. It's always nice knowing how much other people really care about you. But then, for a brief moment, my eyes locked with those of the little girl's spirit floating in the air, and that's all it took.
いけない。
The spirit was quicker to act than I was to realize what I'd done. By the time I had, it was too late. She was already within me. Instantly, my stomach emptied. It was intensely, massively hungry. Or I was. The hungriest I'd ever been.
さやか、ごめん。ちょっとデートは待って。え？私、それ食べないと。
I flew over to Sayaka's chair and threw open one of the stacked boxes. Jackpot! It was full of custard-filled cream puffs. I grabbed one and just shoved it into my mouth with absolutely no regard for master manners. The rich custard melted in my mouth and the light, delicate aroma filled my nostrils. But rather than sating my appetite, this delicious temptation only made it stronger.
おいしい。
あらあら、今度はあの子ナホちゃんについちゃったのね。
あ、本当だ。ナホちゃん大丈夫？
I had neither the time nor the desire to answer her question. I was too busy moving my hands and mouth, either eating sweets or formulating a game plan to eat further sweets more efficiently. But I couldn't exactly leave her hanging.
大丈夫。
After every bite, the girl possessing me expressed pure, absolute gratitude. I heard whispers from her to the effect of, "I'm so happy" and "thank you so much," and I immediately realized this could be a real problem.
さやかが同情するのも仕方ないのかも。
The desire to continue eating no matter what made the spirit every girl's worst enemy, and the worst part was, you just couldn't say no to her. She was too relatable. Rarely had I ever encountered a spirit who elicited such sympathy that its host would choose not to part with it.
こっちのエクレアも美味しい。さやかはもういいの？私もうお腹いっぱい。っていうか、こんなに食べたっけ？
The number of open and empty boxes was either astounding or sickening, depending on your viewpoint.
さやか、見ていて気持ちのいい食べっぷりだったよ。
間違いなく体重が増えるでしょうね。楽しみだわ。お腹のぷよぷよ、ぜひ触らせてちょうだいね。
ダメです。私は触られるより触りたい派ですから。
そうだったの、さやか。それじゃ今までは遠慮してたんだね。いいんだよ。俺をもっと触って撫でて抱きしめてくれたって。
今そんな話はしてないでしょ。
Oh. Inamar was quickly knocked to the floor. Sayaka then ran right past him over to me.
ナホちゃん、それ以上食べないで。太るの反対。そんなこと言われても。食べたくて仕方がないのだもの。ナホタンが太っちゃうなんてやだ。それは私も困るけど。
But my hunger could not be easily sated. My hands just wouldn't stop grabbing candies and sweets and desserts, one after another after another.
さやかが望むなら、俺があの礼を払おうか。
でも払うのはやっぱりかわいそう。他に方法はないの？
憑依を剥がすこともできるけど、あの礼を放っておけばまた別の誰かに取り付くだろうね。
さやかちゃんがナホちゃん以外はどうなってもいいというのであれば、それでもいいんじゃないかしら。
それも困ります。どうしたらいいの？
Sayaka took a contemplative stance, holding her head in her hands as she attempted to suss out a possible solution to this problem. And it didn't take her long to brainstorm something.
そうだ、成仏してもらえばいいんじゃない？
レイが満足するまでスイーツを食べ続けてもらうの？でもそれって今の状況と何ら変わりないわよね。
さやかとさえのきさんでだいぶ食べてるけど、まだ満足はしていないみたいだしね。
どれだけの量を食べたらあの子が満足するのか想像できないわ。
そうじゃなくて、あの子が食べられなかったのって美味しくて有名なスイーツだったんです。
Oh, so you just need those?
だから生前あの子が食べたことがないぐらい美味しいスイーツを味わえれば成仏するんじゃないかなって。ああ、なるほど。
The spirits seemed to be in agreement as well. She was nodding furiously. Even she hadn't considered this plan previously, but she was clearly all aboard now.
近くに美味しいって評判のスイーツ屋さんなかったっけ？
この近所のスイーツならほとんど俺が買ってきたよ。さやかへの愛ゆえにね。
それでも成仏しないんだから、もっと美味しいものじゃないとダメってことなんだろうな。なほたん、どこかいいお店知ってる？猫カフェレラ。それはまた今度2人でデートするときに行こうね。
Sayaka rejected my suggestion, not that it was particularly likely to appease the spirit anyway, since the true point of the cafe wasn't its sweets but its feline companions.
ねえなほちゃん、それならやっぱり私とデートしましょう。
A ticket was handed to me, presented with a certain flair that suggested it must have been something special. Oh my god! Aiko has one of Willy Wonka's golden tickets! That'll satisfy the spirit for sure!
カフェホルタース。
That was the name, and the ticket also bore the date, as well as a 5:30 p.m. timestamp. Sayaka clearly recognized the significance of what I'd just been handed.
隣の駅前の予約だけで1年待ちって評判のカフェホルタースの予約チケット。
What?
なんですって？
The piece of cake I'd been eating fell from my now agape mouth and crumbled onto the floor. I remembered hearing about this place during a TV feature.
開店当初、予約待ちの列が駅前を埋め尽くしたっていう
Jeez.
しかもこれ今日の予約じゃないですか。
Now I'm hungry.
アイコさん、どうしたんですかこれ？
お客様になり損ねた方から取り上げたのよ。
Ugh. Aiko said this in a coy, playful voice, clearly riding the waves of Sayaka's excitement. She continued in this matter, outlining her story in greater detail.
頼まれていた情報を渡したら1円も払わずに連絡がつかなくなった方がいてね。そんなのってあんまりでしょ。だから滞納した分の利子も含めて貯金その他お金になりそうなものは片っ端から回収させてもらったの。
God damn, don't mess with her.
片っ端からですか？
そう。このチケットもその中の一つってこと。売りさばこうにも今日しか使えないチケットだし、それならたまには親しい人たちと美味しいものを食べたいわ。
親しい人たち。
なほちゃんはもちろんだけど、さやかちゃんとはるゆきくんもご招待したいわ。どうかしら。いい
んですか？
これを機に親睦を深めたいところね。
だってなほちゃん、行ってみようよ。
さやかが行くなら俺も行くよ。どこまでもついていくよ。だから安心してね、さやか。
あんたはお呼びじゃないってば。
This poor guy. As Sayaka beat the ever-loving snot out of Inamaru again, I took this opportunity to glance over at Aiko and study her for any signs of ulterior motive.
親しい人たちと言われるほど、あなたと仲良くしたことはないと思うのだけれど。
I'd known Aiko for a while, but mostly just as a colleague in supernatural studies. I'd never gone out with her, nor even sat in and drunk tea with her like I frequently would with Sayaka.
あらなほちゃん、その目は何かしら。
アイコ、何を企んでいるの？
何も企んでなんていないわ。たまにはレーグではなく 人間のおしゃべりに付き合ってお茶を楽しみたいと思っただけよ。
そう？
それにね、ナホちゃん。
Suddenly, she was right next to me, and with her porcelain-like fingers, she lifted the strawberry from the shortcake I was eating.
私たち親友ですものね。放課後にお茶をするくらいいいでしょ。
親友？
はい、
Instinctively, I did open my mouth, at which point the strawberry was gently placed on my tongue, and I found myself swallowing it without hesitation.
ナホちゃんたら口元に生クリームがついているわよ。
She brought her finger up to my lips and wiped the cream from them, after which she stuck that same finger in her own mouth, savoring the second-hand cream she'd scored.
甘さ控えめで美味しいわね。
何するのよ。メロハーン。美少女同士のからの生クリーム。
Sayaka shrieked and held her nose, presumably to keep it from bleeding. Which did seem to be a real concern, given how red her face had gone.
すっごくメロハーンな光景でごちそうさまでした。でもダメ、アイコさん。ナホタンにこれ以上手を出さないで。さやか。
Sayaka burst between me and Aiko and hugged me with ferocious intensity. Her fresh citrus perfume tickled the inside of my nose as her supple breasts, roughly the same size as my own, pressed up against my face, which made it kind of hard to breathe for a moment, not to mention the food.
さやか、苦しい。ごめんね、ナホタン。でもこうでもしないと、ナホタンまたアイコさんにってされちゃうもん。されないから。
二人とも相変わらず仲良しなのね。焼けちゃうわ。
Aiko's faux pouty voice was only making matters worse with Sayaka, and in turn, I was getting more and more fed up with the whole situation. Which is about when I realized that my body had grown lighter. Huh?
憑依が取れた？
My concern over suffocating to death on Sayaka's boobs seemed to have diverted my attention away from all the delicious sweets. And sure enough, it only took a moment of scanning the area around me to see the spirit girl floating freely, looking a bit concerned. She seemed to be trying to decide between Aiko and Inumaro, the latter of whom was on the ground holding his stomach. Naturally, she chose to possess Inumaro this time.
甘いものが食べたい。
He quickly shot to his feet and ran full speed toward the remaining piles of boxes of candy and confectionaries.
うまい。でもこれ間違いなく太っちゃうね。こりゃ大変だ。さやか、メタボな俺でも愛してくれるよね。
ナホタン、こっち向いて。私からのも食べてくれるよね。はい、口開けて。さやか、そういうのはせめて他に人がいないところで。気にしなくていいんだよ、ナホタン。ほら、恥ずかしくないから。さ
あれ、さやか聞いてないね。わかった。一緒にダイエットに励む方がいいのかな。それじゃあ運動用にジャージを買いに行かなくっちゃね。どんなのがいいかな。やっぱりお揃いが。
Ugh, this guy.
勝手におかしな話を進めるのはやめて。
あなたたちっていつ見てもおかしいのね。見ていて飽きないわ。
And in this manner, the conversation devolved into pure anime trope. What? Oh, alright. Remaining in such a state for the entire walk to Cafe Horthath. Out of breath, we finally arrived at our destination only 5 minutes after the 5:30 reservation time. Fashionably late, some might say. It's asking me to save? I mean, okay. What?